Part 1. The Letter That Waited 10 Years. 10 years had passed since Emily Carter last heard the name Noah Bennett. Yet on a quiet autumn evening, as golden leaves drifted across the streets of Boston, his name suddenly returned to her life in the most unexpected way. Emily was 34 now. Her days were simple and predictable. She worked at a small publishing company, lived alone in a cozy apartment, and spent most evenings reading beside the window. People often described her as calm. What they didn't know was that a part of her heart had remained frozen for 10 years. A part that belonged to Noah. Back when they were 24, Emily and Noah had shared a love that seemed impossible to break. They dreamed of traveling together, opening a bookstore, and growing old in a small town near the ocean. Then one morning, Noah disappeared. No phone call, no explanation, no goodbye. He simply vanished. For months, Emily searched for answers. She called his friends, contacted his family, and even drove to places they had once visited together. Nothing. It was as if Noah had erased himself from the world. The pain nearly destroyed her. Eventually, she accepted what everyone else believed. He had chosen to leave. And that belief became the wound she carried silently through the years. On that autumn evening, Emily returned home after work and noticed a small envelope resting inside her mailbox. The paper looked old, very old. Its edges were yellowed, and the handwriting immediately caught her attention. Her heart stopped. She knew that handwriting. She had once memorized every curve of those letters. With trembling fingers, she carried the envelope upstairs and sat beside her window. Outside, rain began tapping softly against the glass. For several minutes, she simply stared at the name written on the front. Emily Carter, written by Noah. A cold shiver ran through her body. The postal stamp showed something strange. The letter had been mailed 10 years earlier. 10 years. But somehow it had only arrived today. Her hands shook as she carefully opened it. Inside was a single page. The words were short, far too short. Emily, if you are reading this, then fate has finally been kinder than time. I never stopped loving you. Everything you believe about why I left is wrong. There is something I could never tell you. I tried, more than once. But the truth was buried before it could reach you. On Part 2. The Town of Whispers. The next morning, Emily boarded a train heading north. The journey from Boston to Maine felt longer than it should have. Outside the window, forests stretched endlessly beneath a gray autumn sky. Small towns appeared and disappeared like memories. The entire time, Noah's letter rested in her lap. She must have read it 20 times already. Every sentence raised new questions. Everything you believe about why I left is wrong. What could possibly explain 10 years of silence? By late afternoon, the train arrived in a small station, surrounded by pine trees and old brick buildings. Willow Creek. The town looked as though it belonged to another era. Quiet streets. Small family-owned shops. Flower boxes beneath windows. People greeting one another by name. It was the kind of place where nothing seemed capable of hiding. Yet somehow it had hidden a secret for 10 years. Emily checked into a small inn near the town square. The owner, an elderly woman named Martha, welcomed her warmly. "You're not from around here," Martha said with a smile. Emily shook her head. "No, I'm looking for someone. Most people who come to Willow Creek are." The strange response lingered in Emily's mind. After dropping off her luggage, she walked through town searching for the name written in Noah's letter. Eleanor Hayes. Finally, near sunset, she found a modest white house at the end of a quiet street. A wooden sign near the porch read, Eleanor Hayes. Emily's heart pounded. For a moment she considered turning back. What if the answers hurt more than the questions? But she had come too far. She knocked. Several seconds passed. Then the door slowly opened. An elderly woman stood before her. Her silver hair was neatly tied back, and her eyes carried a sadness that seemed decades old. "Can I help you?" she asked softly. Emily swallowed hard. "My name is Emily Carter." The woman froze. The color drained from her face. For several long seconds, neither of them spoke. Then Eleanor whispered something barely audible. "Oh my God." She looked as though she had seen a ghost. "You know who I am?" Emily asked. Eleanor nodded slowly. "Yes." "How?" The older woman's eyes filled with tears. Because Noah talked about you every day. Emily felt the world tilt beneath her feet. Every day. The words struck her harder than she expected. Eleanor stepped aside. You should come in. The house smelled of old books and lavender. Photographs covered the walls. Family portraits, town celebrations, children and grandchildren. Ah, lifetime of memories. Eleanor guided Emily into a small sitting room and offered her tea. Neither woman touched their cup. Finally, Emily placed Noah's letter on the table. He told me to find you. Eleanor stared at the letter. Her hands trembled. I wondered if this day would ever come. Emily leaned forward. Please tell me what happened. The older woman closed her eyes. For a moment, she seemed to be gathering the strength to revisit an old wound. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. Noah never left because he stopped loving you. Emily felt tears sting her eyes. Then why did he disappear? Eleanor looked toward a framed photograph sitting on a nearby shelf. A photograph of a young Noah, smiling, alive, happy. The expression on Eleanor's face changed. Not sorrow, not regret. Something heavier, guilt, because someone made sure the two of you would never be together. Emily's breath caught. What do you mean? Eleanor reached for a wooden box resting beneath the table. The box looked ancient, its corners worn with age, its lock slightly rusted. Carefully, she placed it before Emily. Inside were dozens of unopened letters. Every single one addressed to Emily Carter. Every single one written by Noah. Emily stared in disbelief. There were too many. Months, years, an entire decade of words that had never reached her. Her hands began shaking uncontrollably. Why? She whispered. Why didn't I receive these? Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. Because someone intercepted them. The room fell silent. Emily felt her heartbeat echo in her ears. One terrible realization formed inside her mind. Noah had never stopped writing, never stopped trying, never stopped loving her. And somewhere in those unopened letters was the truth that had stolen 10 years from both of them. Eleanor slowly pushed the wooden box toward her. You deserve to know everything. Emily reached for the first letter, but she had no idea that the truth waiting inside would be far more heartbreaking than she could imagine. End of part 2. Part 3. The letters that never arrived. Emily stared at the wooden box as though it contained another life. Perhaps it did. Inside were dozens of letters, each carefully addressed to her. Some envelopes were faded with age. Others still looked almost new. Together, they represented 10 years of words she had never been allowed to read. Her fingers trembled as she opened the first envelope. The date at the top made her heart ache. It had been written only 3 weeks after Noah disappeared. Emily, if you are reading this, then I have finally found a way to reach you. I know you must hate me. I know you think I abandoned you, but I swear to you, I never chose to leave. Every morning I wake up believing I'll see you again. Every night I fall asleep wondering if you still think about me. Please don't give up on me. I'm trying to come back. I'm trying harder than you can imagine. Love always. Noah. A tear rolled down Emily's cheek. She opened another, then another, and another. Every letter carried the same message. Noah loved her. Noah missed her. Noah was trying to return. The years unfolded through ink and paper. Birthdays he remembered. Christmases he spent alone. Dreams he still carried. Promises he still hoped to keep. Not once did he sound like a man who wanted to leave. Not once. Emily felt as though her entire past was being rewritten before her eyes. For 10 years she had believed she had been abandoned. But the letters told a completely different story. When she finally looked up, Eleanor was quietly crying. You knew about these? Emily asked. The older woman nodded. Yes. Then why didn't you send them to me? Pain crossed Eleanor's face. Because I didn't have them. Emily frowned. What do you mean? Eleanor took a deep breath. For years Noah believed you were receiving his letters. Emily felt cold. What? He thought you had chosen not to answer. The room became silent. Both of them had spent 10 years believing the other had walked away. 10 years. Part 4. The secret that changed everything. The photograph remained on the table between them. Emily could not stop looking at it. The young woman beside Noah smiled confidently at the camera, unaware that years later her image would become part of a mystery that had stolen an entire decade. "Tell me everything," Emily said quietly. Eleanor nodded. "You deserve the truth." Outside, evening settled. Over Willow Creek, rain tapped softly against the bay windows while the old clock in the hallway ticked steadily. Then Eleanor began. 10 years ago, Richard Bennett was facing serious financial problems. Emily blinked in surprise. "That's impossible. He was wealthy." "He appeared wealthy," Eleanor replied, "but appearances can be deceptive." According to Eleanor, Richard's company had accumulated enormous debt. If the situation became public, everything he had spent his life building could collapse. That was when the Lawson family entered the picture. Victoria Lawson's father controlled a powerful corporation. A marriage between Noah and Victoria would bring both families together and save Richard's business. "But Noah loved me," Emily said. "Yes," Eleanor replied. "That was the problem." Emily felt anger rising inside her. To Richard Bennett, their relationship had been an obstacle, a problem to solve, a threat to his ambitions. "He ordered Noah to end things with you," Eleanor continued. "And Noah refused. Every time." A sad smile crossed Eleanor's face. "He never stopped choosing you." Emily lowered her eyes. For years, she had believed Noah stopped fighting for their love. Now she was discovering he had never stopped at all. So what happened? Eleanor hesitated. Then she opened another drawer and removed a newspaper clipping. The headline immediately caught Emily's attention. "Young business heir injured in highway accident." The article was dated exactly 10 years earlier. Her hands began to shake. "Noah?" Eleanor nodded. 3 days before he was supposed to propose to you." Emily felt her heart pound. The article explained that Noah's car had been struck by a truck during a storm. He survived, but he suffered serious injuries. Several weeks passed before he fully regained consciousness. Emily looked up. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" Part 5. The last letter. For several moments, Emily could only stare at the envelope in her hands. The paper was worn but carefully preserved. Across the front, Noah's handwriting looked exactly as she remembered it. "For Emily, if necessary." The words felt heavy, as though Noah had known that one day she would sit in this room. Searching for answers, Emily took a shaky breath and carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a single folded letter. The date at the top was 9 years and 8 months old. Her eyes filled with tears before she had even begun reading. "Emily, if you are reading this, then things did not happen the way I hoped. I wanted to come back to you, more than anything. But life does not always give us the ending we dream about." After the accident, the doctors discovered something they had not expected. The impact revealed a rare heart condition, one that had been silently growing for years. "At first, I believed I could beat it. I believed I would recover, return to you, and finally ask the question I had planned to ask before everything changed. But the months passed, and the truth became impossible to ignore. My future was uncertain, very uncertain. The doctors warned me that even with treatment, there were no guarantees. I was terrified. Not for myself, for you. I imagined marrying you, building a home together, growing old beside you. Then I imagined leaving you behind because of an illness I could not control. The thought destroyed me. I loved you too much to ask you to carry that burden. So I made the hardest decision of my life. I stepped away, not because I stopped loving you, because I never stopped. Every letter I wrote was my way of staying close while pretending to let go. I hoped you would hate me. I hoped anger would help you move on." Part 6. The love that found its way home. Emily barely slept that night. The words repeated endlessly in her mind. He's alive. For 10 years, she had imagined countless endings. In some, Noah had forgotten her. In others, he had built a new life far away. Sometimes she feared he was no longer alive at all. But reality was something she had never expected. He was here, only a few miles away, and he had no idea she had come. The next morning, Eleanor drove Emily to the edge of town. The road wound through tall pine trees before opening onto a peaceful lakeside neighborhood. "There," Eleanor said softly. Emily followed her gaze. A small white cottage stood near the water. Wildflowers surrounded the porch. Wind chimes moved gently in the morning breeze. It looked like the kind of place Noah had once dreamed of living. For a moment, Emily could not move. 10 years of memories pressed against her heart. The first time they met, their late-night conversations, the plans they made, the future they lost. And now, somehow, she was standing at the doorway of the life that might have been. Eleanor squeezed her hand. "The rest is yours." Then she quietly walked away. Emily stood alone. Her heart pounded so loudly she could hear it. Finally, she stepped forward and knocked. A few seconds passed. Then the door opened. The world stopped. Noah stood there, older. A few lines marked his face now. His hair carried traces of gray, but his eyes were exactly the same. The same eyes she had loved 10 years ago. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Noah stared at her as though he were looking at an impossible dream. His lips parted. "Emily?" The sound of her name in his voice shattered the last wall around her heart. Tears filled her eyes instantly. "Hi, Noah." He looked frozen, unable to breathe, unable to believe. Then his eyes began to fill with tears, too. "I must be dreaming," he whispered. Emily shook her head. "No." The next moment, Noah stepped forward, and Emily ran into his arms. 10 years of heartbreak disappeared in a single embrace. They held each other tightly. Neither wanted to let go. Neither wanted to lose another second. When they finally pulled apart, both were crying. "You got my letter," Noah said softly. Emily nodded, "And I found the others." Pain crossed his face. "The letters?" "Yes." Noah closed his eyes. For years he had believed she never wanted to answer. For years she had believed he never wanted to return. Now the truth stood between them, not as a wall, but as a bridge. They spent the entire day talking beside the lake, hour after hour, story after story, apology after apology. Sometimes they laughed. Sometimes they cried. Sometimes they simply sat together in silence. Neither could recover the years they had lost, but they could understand them, and that changed everything. As the sun began to set, Noah reached into his pocket. Emily stared as he carefully removed a small velvet box. Her breath caught. "I carried this for 10 years, Noah said. His voice trembled. "I should have given it to you a long time ago." He opened the box. Inside was the same ring he had planned to give her before the accident. The ring he had never stopped carrying. Tears streamed down Emily's face. "Noah, I don't know how much time life gives us," he said. "I don't know what tomorrow looks like. But I know one thing." He took her hand. "I loved you 10 years ago." His voice broke. "I loved you every day in between." Then he smiled through his tears. "And I love you now." The lake reflected the golden colors of the evening sky. Emily looked at the man she had never truly stopped loving. The man who had spent a decade carrying the same hope she carried. And at last, she gave the answer both of them had waited 10 years to hear. "Yes." Noah laughed and cried at the same time. Emily did too. As the sun disappeared beyond the water, they stood together beneath the fading light. The years they lost could never return, but love had. And sometimes that is the miracle. Not that life gives us a perfect ending, but that even after years of silence, mistakes, and heartbreak, a true heart can still find its way home. The end.